Welcome back to Books in 10. Are you ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always excited to jump into these powerful ideas.
Today we're cracking open Dialogues of Plato Volume 2.
Oh, Plato. Always a good time for some deep thinking, huh?
We're going to be exploring some pretty big
A
questions
soul, the nature of reality.
and how we humans grasp knowledge.
Heavy stuff. But we'll make it relatable, I promise.
Exactly. It's all about finding those moments.
The kind that make you see things differently.
And hey, while we're on the topic of exciting discoveries, remember our iPhone giveaway?
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Once we hit 10,000 subscribers, one lucky listener is going to win a brand new iPhone.
So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell all your friends about it.
Now back to Plato.
Let's do it.
One of the things that really struck me in Volume 2,
What's that?
it's how Plato distinguishes between what he calls right opinion and true knowledge.
That's a classic Plato move right there.
It seems like he's recognizing that we can act effectively based on instinct or experience,
Right opinion, he calls it.
even if we can't fully explain why we do what we do.
It's like, having a knack for something without knowing the theory behind it.
Exactly. You might be a fantastic cook,
Right.
but not really understand the science of how different ingredients interact.
You just know what works.
But it's important to note that Plato isn't saying that intuition or right opinion is superior to knowledge.
No, not at all.
He's simply acknowledging that it exists.
And that it plays a role in our lives.
What he's really interested in is pushing us beyond those gut feelings
Beyond those unexamined assumptions.
to arrive at a deeper, more reasoned understanding of ourselves and the world.
Moving from I just know to I know why I know.
I like that. It's like the difference between following a recipe and actually understanding the principles of cooking.
Gives you more freedom and mastery that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for Plato, that journey from opinion to knowledge, it's closely tied to the soul's journey.
A theme that starts to emerge more strongly in Volume 2.
Now, this is where things start to get really fascinating.
Oh, I love it when things get fascinating. Tell me more.
Well, Plato introduces this idea that our souls are immortal
Immortal souls, huh?
and that they carry within them knowledge from a previous existence.
Whoa, hold on. Knowledge from a previous existence, what's that all about?
It's a concept known as reminiscence,
Reminiscence.
which suggests that learning isn't about passively receiving information,
Okay.
but rather about actively recalling what our souls already know.
So we're not empty vessels waiting to be filled.
That's good.
We're more like, well, what are we like?
Beings who arrive in this world with a kind of innate wisdom, perhaps.
A connection to something beyond the physical realm. I like that.
And before we get too deep into the metaphysical,
Right. Gotta keep things grounded.
don't forget about that iPhone we're giving away.
Almost forgot. Free iPhone, people.
Make sure you subscribed
Hit that button.
and have hit the like button to be entered.
Don't miss out.
Okay, back to this idea of the soul remembering knowledge from a previous life.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept.
But it does raise some tricky questions, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
one of the most famous challenges to Plato's theory of recollection is something called the Meno problem,
The Meno problem.
named after one of his dialogues, actually.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the problem?
Well, it boils down to this. If we don't know something, how can we even begin to search for it?
I see what you mean. If we already knew it, we wouldn't need to search in the first place.
Precisely. It's a real head-scratcher.
So how does Plato get around that?
Well, his answer, of course, is that we're not really searching for knowledge, but rather remembering it.
Remembering it.
Our experiences in this life act as triggers, you see.
Triggers.
Awakening those innate ideas that our souls have carried with them from a previous existence.
I see, like a memory jog.
Exactly. It's a bit like having a melody stuck in your head that you can't quite place.
Been there.
And then suddenly you hear a few notes on the radio.
And bam, it all comes flooding back.
The melody was always there, somewhere in your memory, just waiting to be activated.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Thanks. I thought so too.
So for Plato, the world around us is full of these triggers, these cues that spark our recollection of those eternal truths.
Truths our souls already know deep down.
But if learning is about remembering, what does that tell us about the nature of reality itself?
Now that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
That's a question Plato tackles head-on in Volume 2.
And it leads him to one of his most famous ideas.
The theory of forms.
But before we dive into those mysterious forms,
And before we go there,
let's take a quick pause to remind everyone about our 10,000 subscriber goal.
free iPhone. Free iPhone.
Help us get there, and you could be the lucky winner of a new iPhone.
Just hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to enter.
All right, back to Plato and those mysterious forms.
We'll be exploring that in depth in the next part of our deep dive.
Oh, so stay tuned.
All right, so we talked about right opinion versus knowledge and the soul's journey.
Right, right.
But now, let's tackle one of Plato's most mind-boggling concepts. The forms.
Ah, yes, the forms.
I have to admit, this one always takes me a minute to wrap my head around.
It's definitely a concept that challenges our everyday way of thinking.
It does.
In essence, the forms are these perfect, eternal blueprints
Look right.
that exist outside of our physical world.
Outside of our world.
They're the ideal versions of things.
Like what kinds of things?
Like justice, beauty, even physical objects.
Physical objects, like...
Like tables and chairs.
So you're saying there's this perfect eternal chair somewhere out there, even though I've never seen it.
Well, not in a physical sense, no.
Yeah.
Plato is suggesting that the chairs we see and touch in our
The
world
chairs we sit on.
are just imperfect copies of the true form of chair.
The form of chair.
The form is like the ultimate template, you see.
Oh.
And everything we experience in the physical world
Everything we see and touch.
is just a shadow
a shadow.
or a reflection of that perfect, unchanging ideal.
So how do these forms connect to the soul's journey then?
Ah, good question.
And the idea of reminiscence that we talked about earlier.
Well, Plato believes that our souls, before entering our physical bodies, existed in the realm of the forms.
It existed in the realm of the forms.
They had direct knowledge of these perfect, eternal truths.
Okay, I'm following.
And the process of learning in this life,
Learning in this life.
according to Plato, is actually a process of remembering
Remembering.
or recognizing those forms that our souls already knew.
So when I look at a beautiful painting,
Yeah.
I'm not just appreciating the colors and shapes on the canvas.
You're not just seeing the physical paint.
I'm actually having this faint echo of that perfect form of beauty.
That your soul encountered before you were born.
Exactly.
And it's not just beauty.
It's not.
Plato believed that all knowledge, all understanding, ultimately comes from our soul's connection to the forms.
That's pretty profound.
It is.
And, this connects to something we've talked about before, right? That Plato wasn't just a philosopher.
Right.
He was also deeply concerned with ethics and living a good life.
Absolutely. And how do the forms relate to that?
That's what I'm wondering.
Well, Plato believed that the forms weren't just these abstract concepts.
Right.
They were the ultimate source of truth and goodness.
Truth and goodness.
The forms of justice, beauty, and goodness were just as real.
Just as real.
Perhaps even more real than the physical world around us.
So living a just life isn't just about following the laws or conforming to social norms then.
It's not just about outward actions.
It's about aligning yourself with the eternal, unchanging form of justice.
Striving to embody those perfect principles in your actions and choices.
Even though we can never fully achieve that perfection in this imperfect world.
Right.
Now, speaking of striving for something better.
Oh, yes. Speaking of striving.
Remember, we're striving to reach 10,000 subscribers.
Don't forget.
So we can give away that awesome iPhone.
A brand new iPhone. Just for one of you lucky listeners.
Help us get there by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.
It's easy. Just click those buttons.
Okay, now back to Plato.
Back to Plato.
I'm curious about how he applies these abstract ideas about forms and the soul
Yeah.
to real-world situations.
Your real life?
How does he do that?
Well, one of the most compelling examples
Give me an example.
is in the dialogue Euthyphro,
Euthyphro,
where Socrates
actor's teacher.
engages in this debate about the nature of piety.
Piety, that's reverence for the gods, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Euthyphro, who considers himself a pious man, claims to know what actions are pleasing to the gods.
He thinks he knows what the gods want.
But Socrates probes deeper,
Socrates always probes deeper.
and he cleverly exposes the flaws in Euthyphro's reasoning.
So he's like, okay, you think you know what piety is,
Right.
but can you really define it?
Can you explain it?
Can you explain why certain actions are pious and others aren't?
That's the key question.
It is.
And through this questioning, Socrates challenges Euthyphro,
Challenges him to think harder.
and by extension, us as listeners,
Us too.
to move beyond simplistic definitions.
Simplistic definitions.
And really grapple with the deeper questions of morality and ethics.
Makes you wonder,
It does.
is something good because the gods say it is?
Good question.
Or are there universal principles of goodness that exist independent of any divine authority.
That's the heart of the issue.
And by dismantling Euthyphro's assumptions,
Breaking down those easy answers.
Socrates opens up a space for us to think critically about our own beliefs and
He
values.
does.
It's like he's saying, don't just accept what you've been told.
Right.
Examine your beliefs, challenge them, and in the process, you might just discover something truly profound.
I love that, and that questioning, that relentless pursuit of truth, even in the face of opposition,
Yes,
is what ultimately leads Socrates to his trial
his trial.
and eventual death, as recounted in the Apology,
the
where Socrates defends himself against charges of corrupting the youth
corrupting the youth.
and impiety.
Accusations that seem to echo Euthyphro's narrow view of piety.
They do, don't they?
They do.
It's an incredibly powerful and moving work.
It is.
Even when facing the possibility of death, Socrates refuses to compromise his principles.
He stands by his beliefs.
He would rather die for speaking the truth than live a lie.
Now, that's what I call integrity,
It takes incredible courage to stand up for your beliefs.
especially when the stakes are so high.
And before we delve further into the Apology
Before we go there,
and the inspiring lessons it offers,
important lessons.
let's not forget about our own exciting milestone, that iPhone giveaway at 10,000 subscribers.
Almost forgot.
Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel,
Do it. Do it.
and tell your friends.
Spread the word.
It's all about spreading the love for knowledge, right?
Absolutely.
And what better way to do that?
Then by potentially winning a brand new iPhone.
We'll be back in a flash to explore the Apology and its relevance to your life today.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Dialogues of Plato Volume 2.
We're in the home stretch now,
We've covered some pretty heady stuff.
right? Opinion versus knowledge, the soul's journey,
The theory of forms,
even touched on the Euthyphro.
with Socrates' debate about piety,
Now we're turning to the Apology
where we see those ideas come to life.
in a very dramatic and personal way,
It's the account of Socrates' trial, right?
where he's facing accusations that could lead to his death.
It's such a powerful story.
It is.
Even facing danger,
Yeah.
Socrates remains true to himself,
Never wavers.
true to his principles.
Makes you think about what it means to live with integrity.
It does.
The Apology isn't just a historical record.
It's more than that.
It's a testament to the power of philosophy.
To shape our lives.
To give us courage.
The courage to stand up for what we believe in.
Even when it's unpopular or even dangerous.
One of the things that always gets me about the Apology
What's that?
is how Socrates talks about death.
Death.
He argues that fearing death is foolish
Foolish. Why?
because we don't really know what it is.
We don't.
It could be a blessing,
A blessing.
a transition to something even better.
He has a point.
He even suggests that fearing death is kind of arrogant,
Arrogant, huh?
like we know better than the gods.
I think he actually says, and I'm paraphrasing here,
Go on.
to fear death, gentlemen, is no other than to think oneself wise when one is not.
Meaning.
To think one knows what one does not know.
So we're afraid of the unknown, essentially.
And assume it's bad.
We're so conditioned to fear death.
It's seen as the ultimate enemy.
But Socrates is saying, hold on a minute.
Maybe it's not what you think,
Maybe it's not something to fear
but to embrace.
as a natural part of life.
Interesting way to look at it.
And this isn't about being reckless or nihilistic.
No, not at all.
It comes from his commitment to reason and virtue.
He believes in living a good life,
A life dedicated to truth and justice.
to bettering the soul.
Wait,
You know, he even compares himself to a gadfly,
a gadfly,
always stinging people,
making them uncomfortable,
provoking them to question their assumptions.
to examine their lives,
He saw that as his mission,
to wake people up,
to the importance of self-knowledge.
and the pursuit of virtue,
For Socrates, that was the true purpose of philosophy.
to make us live more thoughtfully, more ethically.
To strive for a deeper kind of happiness.
That goes beyond the material world.
Exactly.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
Like just as relevant today as it was centuries ago,
Definitely.
in a world filled with distractions,
So many distractions.
superficiality.
Yeah.
Socrates reminds us that a life unexamined is not a life worth living.
It's a call to action.
To question our beliefs,
Engage in a thoughtful dialogue.
to find real meaning and purpose.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And speaking of things worth pursuing,
Oh, right. Almost forgot.
remember our iPhone giveaway?
We're getting close to that 10,000 subscriber goal.
And one of you could be the lucky winner.
So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel.
Spread the word.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into Plato's dialogues,
Volume 2.
I want to leave you with a question.
Okay, I like questions.
If Socrates were alive today,
If Socrates were here now,
What would he be challenging us to question?
What would he make us think about?
What unexamined assumptions would he be poking at?
It's a good question. I think he'd push us to look beyond the noise of modern life,
To cut through the distraction.
to reconnect with those timeless values.
Truth, justice, wisdom.
He'd remind us that a good life isn't about wealth or status.
It's about the soul.
Beautifully said. We encourage you to keep exploring Plato's dialogues.
They're full of wisdom and insight
They can help us navigate the complexities of life.
and become better versions of ourselves.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Dialogues of Plato Volume 2.
Until next time.
Keep questioning, keep seeking.
And keep diving deep into the world of ideas.